Hey everybody, it's Dr. Quinn here. I am taking a look at writing assignment number 4, the situation file. So when you go into the, you click on the link for assignments in Leo, you'll see that there are like 2 PDF files. There's the situation, which tells you the scenario, and then there are like the assignment, the specific assignment overview. Let's actually go, let's look at the situation first. I guess it doesn't really matter which one we do. Okay, so everybody in class is writing to the same scenario. It's a business specific setup here, and you've been hired to work as an assistant manager for this small business that is a laundromat workspace, right? Some of those like sort of new hippie workspaces where it has a laundromat attached, you know, in like workstations and all that. So it gets a lot of traffic. The business is popular and it's growing, and there needs to be new management. You've been hired for that. So you get background on the situation, and you are welcome for writing assignment 4 to use anything from the scenario in your paper, in your report itself without attribution, meaning you can, I'm not saying cut and paste any of this, but you can use some of the data from this. You don't have to cite the scenario, but you don't want to use any of the phrasing, like you wouldn't cut and paste any of this content. That wouldn't be allowed. But the idea behind giving you the scenario is that you see the background so you can explain the problems and solutions to Mark Carmen. Okay. So you've got a description of the space, the purpose of the business, the history of the business, and that gives you a little bit of background on Mark Carmen so that you understand the scope of what he knows and doesn't. Because say, for example, you decide to take a cybersecurity approach to this assignment. Mark may not have the same cybersecurity background that you do. And so there may be terms and things that you have to define. So this is why you're given all of this background. It's not that you have to use it all, but it's there for you to consider as you put the report together, because even as a new employee, there's some information you would gather in knowing your boss, and then how do you approach your boss with bad news, and how do you present data with recommendations for making changes to a business that you haven't been part of for long. It's a sort of tricky situation, and it's definitely something that technical writers have to do. They have to present information in report form. You have to make it accessible to all readers, etc., etc. So that's what this is about. So you've got that history. You can take a look at this laundry bar concept, that there are lots of different types of employees, including baristas. We've got people working in the laundromat area. So all different types of employees doing different jobs. And that you're going to notice that there are particular issues there, right? So you can read through and see all the different issues. When you decide to write your report, you're not focusing on all of the issues. You're choosing issues, and perhaps related to your major, meaning if your major is IT, you can focus on some of the IT security issues. If your major is HR, you can focus on some of the human management side of the equation. If your major is business, focus on some of the business elements. This scenario is so chock full, it's not meant to be overwhelming. It's meant to help most of our students who have those types of majors focus on areas of personal and academic interest and see how it would apply in the workspace. Okay, so you can take a look at that. You can even see some diagrams that are labeled to show you sort of what it looks like so far, or what the business looks like. Now, here are lots of the different issues listed. Again, don't focus on all of them. Focus on a couple of them in relation to your major. Make the research and the work you've done in prior classes, put that to work for you, and also consider the discussions we've talked about in doing research in the library databases, because you are going to be doing library research. This writing assignment 4 is a hybrid. It's a workplace document that does require some outside research into peer-reviewed journal content, or trade journals, depending on your issues of focus, and you will be documenting them like you did in a traditional essay, but you're not actually writing a traditional essay. You'll see that here are concerning issues, and they're even broken down into cybersecurity, business practices, and some others. This is giving you some background on what Mark is familiar or not familiar with to help you determine what might need to be defined, or maybe you create a glossary or what have you. So you can see some of that background information here in the scenario. You don't expect you to memorize this, but my hope is that you refer to it as you put your actual report together. So the report is 1,500 to 2,200 words. And so words in single space. So formatted single spaced. The length is 1,500 to 2,500 words before you reference it. So I always consider length from memo to the conclusion of the report itself. Okay? You have to integrate at least 2 graphics. That's why we have discussions this week on graphics to help you consider them. And within the main section of your document is the problem and solution section. That's where you're going to have a majority of that research. You don't need any research in the memo. You're welcome to include research in your executive summary, because executive summary is like the report in miniature. Okay. This is also why this assignment requires a draft. And so everybody gets draft feedback before it's graded. So that draft deadline's in the syllabus, it's in the announcements, and now it's attached to the assignment itself. So you should see that deadline everywhere. The deadline for my April class is April 15th. If I'm still using this video in the summer, just go in and double check when you click on the assignment. You should be able to see the deadline for that. So when we go into activities and assignments and we click on assignment here, you should see the deadline. This is going to be your draft deadline. Okay. And then of course, you'll see announcements. I'll be like, give you a separate, final deadline to give you more time to work on this piece that has a lot more moving parts. Okay. Of the 6 sources, 2 of them have to come from scholarly journals or credible trade journals. All right. So that's where that outside discussion research has come in. Your task. Mark is not aware that these problems are happening. You've got to inform him. You've got to break some bad news. I want you to select 2 or 3. I know the assignment says 2 to 4, but I want you to take more of a deeper dive into some of the problems. And if you list 15 problems, you're not going into any depth, and that's not going to be a successful report. So you can consider some of the following, and some of these mirror what's already in the situation. So my recommendation is just the first day, look at the situation, highlight which issues you're comfortable talking about, and that's where you're going to start some outside research. Okay, you will cite and list your sources in APA 7th edition, the sources. So a lot of this is redundant. It's just reminding you what was on page 1 is also on page 3 of this assignment overview. Let's see. Paper is permanent. Your word forms need to be accurate. You've got to run a grammar and mechanics spell checker, but please do not use AI for this report unless you show me what was AI'd and show me what wasn't. So for example, my recommendation would be, if you happen to do that, I don't think it's a good idea because AI doesn't, this report's complex and it doesn't ever interpret it well. Students who have ended up using AI, who don't document that they've used AI will fail the assignment. Students that document it, what will happen is you have to like change the font color and then give me a legend, like a little footnote letting me know everything in red, everything in purple was what was AI. Everything else is how I amended the AI. That's acceptable, right? So you have to document what you use. And of course, I want to see the majority of this as you're writing regardless. Mark is your primary audience, but your business associates at Work and Suds are going to be like a secondary audience. Break it out. Don't write super big chunky paragraphs and so on and so forth. Signposts, signal, like if you're in a conclusion section and you don't have a header, which is fine, say in conclusion or in summary. This part's going to be really important. You want to have the memo on a page by itself. No more than 150 words. That's super short. You want to have like to, from, date, subject, dear Mark. Here's the report that you asked for. Take a look at the feedback that I put in the memo discussions and you'll see that there. Your executive summary is no more than a page, and as an attachment to this video, I will do a link for UMGC's executive summary main page, which I think is really helpful. And I'll also, as I'm giving draft feedback, give a link to that. This is the heart of your essay, the problems and solutions, where you have like 2 to 4 issues. I would recommend 2 to 3. And that most of those 6 required sources are embedded in these sections. Conclusion, you don't have to repeat everything, but main points for sure. And then, of course, a reference section. Reminder, he's the boss. Your recommendations are probably going to cost some money. So you're not just stating that the problem is, you're making recommendations for changes. That's that solutions section. In other words, you can't simply state that Wi-Fi is no password. You need to recommend how to set the Wi-Fi password. Don't mention that one person shouldn't be maintaining the website on their own. You need to provide recommendations for changes. What I really like when some of this happens is if you have like responsibilities, like your images could be responsibilities flowchart before, figure 1, responsibilities flowchart after, or hierarchy set up as figure 2. You creating the images always does really well in my eyes. I'm a grader of the Simone Biles school of grading, meaning that you're choosing to do something and build it on your own. That's a little bit more complex than just cutting and pasting an image from something you found on some random website. So I tend to grade that more favorably. I'm definitely not a fan, let me show you, of cybersecurity images. These images do not get a high score for figures in my text. They're artistic, but they are not data-driven. They don't have any merit in making a decision. So an artistic rendering of a lock on like a motherboard or a chip or something like that is not going to make your case. We want data-driven images. That's why the discussions are where it's the method to the madness of this class is that when you're talking about how small businesses lose money and you find a bar chart that shows cybersecurity flaws, making small businesses in the United States lose $7 billion in 2023, that's much more functional and much more persuasive. So again, I'm a big fan of data-driven images, not like an image of somebody washing a car or an image of somebody putting laundry into a laundromat. And be really careful with your use of AI-driven images. Lots of students are adding AI images, and unless it's something specific to a recommendation or to a problem, just an AI image of a laundromat is not really that effective. So again, the images must convey some sort of data, and better in an image than in prose paragraphing. That's the purpose of images in a report like this. Okay, so you've got this sort of overview here. Note, I've notified you of the due date. The date on the assignment is for the draft due date. You must get your draft in by then unless you email me and coordinate ahead of time. That's fine. The final due date is like a week later, so you'll have plenty of time to sort of work on that assignment and get that in. I want to make sure that students have time to really work on this document. It's got the most moving parts. Okay. Having a draft and a final that considers my feedback moves you from the possibility of just getting a B to a possibility of getting an extremely high score on the assignment. So again, when you click into the assignment, right in the activities and assessments and under assignments, you'll get these 2 PDFs, which I just reviewed. Then you'll also get the rubric itself, and you will see every student should be using the rubrics in every class as an editorial checklist. Use it to grade your work as you're preparing the draft. And the more pieces of the puzzle you've got complete, the easier it's going to be to turn it from draft to final. So the heavy work is in preparing the draft. The draft itself is not graded. Its absence is graded though. Okay. So note, there's that length column, or the length row, number of graphics, the relevance of your sources. So if you're only going to like Wikipedia and you have none of that peer-reviewed journal content, you may have a couple of sources in the problems and a couple in the conclusion, but we need to make sure that not only are the sources in the right place, but the sources have that high quality that the scholarly or trade journals. So this is using them in the right sections, high quality research. So number and sources in the problem and solution section. So spreading the wealth of your research across both sections. Did you have your memo? Did you have an executive summary? How did you actually write the problem and solution section and incorporate your data in those sections, including the figures? How did you accommodate your primary audience, which is Mark, and then your secondary audience? The quality and the message of your graphics, the conclusion section, APA format. The only thing that's required for APA format is how you document your data, how you quote your in-text citations in a reference section. You do not have to format the rest of this as an APA paper. Of course, your grammar is not worth a heck of a lot. It's less than 10% of the total, but it is important because it extends your professionalism. And then, of course, that revision. I go back and watch the videos that I make for your drafts, and then I consider how well you accommodated that. You don't have to make every change, but you have to really consider and at least address some of it, right? So that's my feedback and overview of writing assignment 4. I hit the time limit here, but if you have questions, just reach out and let me know.